Awesome. So hello everyone. Don't forget to sign in. If you do need to sign in afterwards, we will show the slide again at the very end. Just let us know. And then Justin will also be putting the tiny URL links in the chat. So yeah, I'll have the slide up for a little bit. Okay. And then without a further ado, so here are just like some of our upcoming events. They are all in Pacific time. This includes week 6 and week 7. There are some stuff that closes. We have many events. Be sure you're getting your activity points, especially if you signed up for graduation regalia. This Friday is the last day to get as many activity points as possible. And then of course, our very last journal meeting is social is 2 weeks from now. It'll be week 8, Wednesday, same day, same location, not same day, sorry, same time and location.
Do any of you all like Krispy Kreme or know anyone who likes Krispy Kreme? Well, do I have a deal for you? So Saikai is selling our Krispy Kreme digital dozen for $12 each. Yeah, so the regular price of a dozen original glazed donuts at Krispy Kreme is around $16. So you're actually saving money by supporting Saikai at the same time. So if you are interested, you can purchase them by either Venmoing the Venmo or Zelling at that number, $12. And at the end of the time, we will be emailing you with the link to your digital dozen. Please include your full name, our mail, and write Krispy Kreme fundraiser in the title. Yeah, so thank you. And
this is how it's going to look like in your email when you do receive the email.
Okay, we're gonna have spring inductions May 19th. This is next week, that Friday from 5 to 7. You do have to RSVP to attend. And so please do that now. Free food will be provided. It is business casual. And we'll basically be celebrating all the flunkies, all the graduating members, as well as the new inductees. And then if you have any photos or videos that you've taken throughout the year and you're like, oh my gosh, we look so good in this. Like I would love for this to be shared. Please just submit it here. There's a QR code and yes, you can also just DM me any of the info as well. Oops, one more thing. And then this is for anyone that would like to be in knowledge, like I said, for inductees, graduates, and flunkies, please fill out this form. There will also be 4 awards that we will be handing out: Saikai Handlander Award, the Pioneer Research Award, the Exemplary Member Award, as well as the Student of the Year Award. So these people that will win will actually get gift cards. So if you would like to win or you want to nominate someone, please follow the link. Oh, this is mine again, sorry. So the Green Mind Project or seminar. So this is our next Green Mind Project. This will be all focused on Earth. This will be next Thursday, May 18th. So it's right before inductions. So you can go to this one and then go to inductions. This will be 1 activity point, and we will be passing out clay pots that you can paint and then have a good time as you also learn about conscious gardening.
Are some of y'all curious what our alumni is up to, or you have no idea what you want to do? Well, talk to some of our UCR Saikai alumni. We are going to have a networking social. It will be Monday, May 22nd, and it will be on Zoom. So be sure to check that out. It will also be worth 1 activity point.
Are you interested in behavioral economics and the impact of credit? Our wonderful treasurer, Brandon, put your hands up, Brandon, is going to be doing a challenger discussion talking about these topics. This will be this Friday, 4 to 5 in SSE Group Meeting Room 1. Please come. It's going to be a very fun time, and you're going to learn a lot of cool stuff. Or maybe you are interested in sleep. Join Camille on Monday, May 15th, 7 to 8 in either Hub 379 or Zoom to talk about how to sleep better. Camille, if you want to put your hand up, I know you're eating, but this is going to be super fun. I know college students, we all have a hard time with sleep, so this can be hopefully super helpful and also very interesting. And then finally, everyone is here today. Pernod, if you can put your hands up, we're also going to have a challenger discussion on escapism and higher education. This will be Tuesday, May 23rd, 5 to 6. Please come and support our awesome challenger discussion presenters.
So we have some candidates. We need to complete next year's board, so please vote. Only active official members' votes will count. And to be active, you need 5 activity points. Or if you were active back in fall, winter, that also counts. But for spring, to be completely active, you need 5 activity points by this Sunday, which is also the deadline for the voting itself. So it will close midnight. And we do need 50% plus 1 active official members of y'all. So please do take the time. Also just know our candidates and submit your voting. And then everything is in the link.
Hello. Yes, this is for our psych. So abstract submissions closed on April 26th, but we still have this new thing ready and open. It is the research proposal grant. So if you are a continuing student, meaning that you are not graduating this year, and you have an idea for research that you would like to conduct, you do not need to have IRB approval. Just have an idea, submit the application. The application ends June 2nd at midnight. This is in Pacific time. You will have the opportunity to earn a mini research grant to help you either collect participants, to rent equipment for testing, or whatever else you can think of that would be allowed underneath the what's the word I'm looking for? The rules there. Yes, so there's the QR code and we don't have the tiny girl. So there's the QR code. Please check it out.
Yes, and you can also go ahead and click the apply for a research proposal grant. It will take you directly to the link. So speaking of RPsych, as y'all know, RPsych is Friday, May 26th. It will be at Hub 302. We're using both North and South. So as long as you go to Hub 302, you'll be able to find it. And it's from 1 to 6:30 p.m. We did put like itinerary here. So poster presentations begin at 1 p.m. So if you're curious what your peers are presenting on, check that out. And then we also will have selected peers specifically giving out highlighted presentations. And then we do have 2 panels. It will be the DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion panel, and then a interdisciplinary research panel. So if any of y'all are interested in any of those topics, be sure to check out the panels. And then lastly, we have a keynote speech from Dr. Luber-Miski. So you do not want to miss out on that at all. And then lastly, we have awards and closing ceremony. And then lastly, please support RPsych. So RPsych has a GoFundMe. 50% of the proceeds will go towards RPsych in the near future. So either next year or other future RPsych conferences. And then the other 50% will actually go towards Operation Safe House. If you're curious to learn about what Operation Safe House does, you can visit their website, operationsafehouse.org. But we do have a goal of $1,000. So if you really appreciate it, if y'all could just donate and help us reach our goal.
Okay, last thing. So the special social is coming up. Remember, this is for gold members only. So if you are a gold member, you will also be getting an email about this very shortly, saying how close you are to gold status. We will be doing the sign up. Also, 2 members with the most activity points will get in free. So we'll waive that $12 as well as the skating rental. So please sign up if you would like to come, and carpooling will be provided.
Another thing for activity points, we will have our end of the year raffle. This is open to both prospective and official. It will take into consideration your points from summer, fall, winter, and as well as this spring quarter. Be sure to keep out for an Instagram live stream. Be sure to be on an eye out also for the date itself. And then just as a refresher, silver is 9 points. That will be giving you 1 raffle entry. Gold is 12 points for 2 raffle entries. And then if you do exceed gold for however many points, you might be getting more entries. And then lastly, please just stay connected. And then I'll pass it on. Oh, also our social tonight for those in person.
Okay, first things first, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Daniel Ozer, who is here to talk a little bit about who he is, his research, and then we're going to do a fun activity for all of those of you who are interested in research. So Dr. Ozer, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Here since 1991 and will shortly be retiring. Like to be able to share my screen.
Okay, sure thing. Let me go ahead.
Unmute.
and get this in display mode. Yes. Okay, so I want to talk today about who wants what. And the work I'm going to be describing is a collaboration that I've had with my graduate students and undergraduate research assistants, going back nearly 30 years for some of the data I'm going to talk about today, and other data is more recent, but everything is pre-pandemic, and who knows, maybe everything has changed. Maybe we all want something different now. I suppose that's possible. So why study goals, which is at the core of this research project? That it's easiest to answer that question by asking another. Anyone here by accident? Raise your hand if you're here by accident. I see one. And I'm guessing there are probably a couple of people who had the goal of being here, but they got caught in traffic or they met a friend and that seemed like a better opportunity for the evening and they didn't make it. And there were large numbers of uncounted millions of people who never formed the goal to come to this event, and they're not here either. Right? But for the most part, what we do is a result of what we intend to do. And if we want to predict behavior, the easiest thing to do is to, a few minutes before that behavior might occur, ask, is that your intention? Now, it's not terribly interesting to predict, say, what you'll do after this meeting, right, by asking you. But it is a little easier to be interested in the question of, like, what is your career goal? What do you want to, what's the occupation you would like to pursue? What are your goals with respect to family, right? That it's unlikely that you will become a doctor by accident, right? Or an insurance agent by accident. These result from, plans and intentions. So if we look at the conceptions of motivation that are in the literature that you might have studied, and you ask, sort of what kinds of motives do goals serve? The tradition in psychology is very top down, to posit a few broad, overarching motivations, and then to claim that goals and behavior serve those broad motivations. And this slide shows a few examples, and I'm sure you've encountered these in your various classes, and if not these, some others that are quite similar. My approach has been different. I ask, why not just ask people what they want, right? Why not just ask, what are your goals? And people have avoided that for really two different reasons. One is that following Freud and that psychodynamic tradition, if motives are unconscious, people won't be able to tell us what their goals really are. You can say you want to be a doctor, but maybe not. Maybe there's some kind of unconscious motivation that's driving that differs in its appearance from that, what appears to be straightforward career goal. Another reason not to ask people what their goals are is that the sheer number of possible answers to that question is mind-numbing. And how do you systematize the results? I really don't know how much motivation is unconscious, and I can't tell by introspection, but I do know that people do form explicit conscious motives, and that people act on those goals that they formulate. That might not be all there is to motivation, but it's at least some of motivation. And I don't take for granted when people say that it's just impossible to do something like systematize the entire range of goals. I thought, well, we won't know it's impossible till we try and fail. And I thought, well, I'll give it a shot and see what happens. So this is what I asked participants to do for, like I say, nearly 30 years. I provided the instruction that you see here. I asked people, what are your goals? And for each goal you identify, think about some specific things you do to attain the goal, and then list 10 goals. And most people have no trouble listing 10 goals. And when we were running research participants in person a number of years ago, occasionally a participant would say, do I really need to have 10? And our stock response was, well, most UCR undergraduates can provide 10 goals. And then that was enough to get everyone to provide 10 goals. And some at the end maybe were a little more trivial, but when we looked to see whether those goals at the end were really different, we didn't see anything in the data that was very large or systematic. So this is the kinds of things we get as a result. And I'm sure if you look at these kinds of goals, you'll recognize, if not yourself, you'll recognize some friends. Not to say that you have all of these goals, but my guess is there's at least one or two here that look familiar to you. In trying to formulate a category scheme for understanding goals, for systematizing a little bit, after a fair amount of work, we settled on 8 broad categories as describing the content of students' goals. And I want to make it clear, I'm really just talking about students' goals here. Goals of different groups may look really very different. You see at the end, there's an other category, and there were really not very many goals that didn't fit into the top 8. And when we look at the other and ask, what are the most common that are in this potpourri of other goals? It turns out that the best way to describe them are acculturation goals. These were goals that I think international students had trying to learn about life on campus and in the United States. So it was goals like, improve my English. And that was the largest category of things that didn't fit into this group of 8. And there weren't a lot of those. So at least in terms of categorizing student goals, these 8 categories, they're very broad, but they seem to do the trick in terms of capturing overt content. Now, we had done a study where we looked at the goals of freshmen within their first 6 weeks of arriving on campus. So if you want to think back to your very start here at UCR, that was one group. And I had an undergraduate honors student who noted that his high school had a psychology class, and he collected our measures in the high school that he came from at the very end of the senior year. And these were all seniors. So there was about a 4-month, 5-month difference in average age between these two groups. So the difference between the high school and college students is probably not something developmental or it's not maturation. It's the change in role. Life is really different. And I'm sure that you know that as well or better than I do. Yet when we look at goals of high school and college students, we see some striking similarities and a couple really, really big differences. So unsurprising, virtually all college students have academic goals, as did most high school students. And virtually everyone has social goals, goals about relationships with other people. But look at the second to the bottom, independence. Nearly 2/3 of high school students have independence goals, right? They want to get out of the house, free a little bit from supervision. And college students have largely attained at least a degree of independence. And the frequency of goals of that type is dramatically decreased. You see, the affect control goals are also really different. And there's 2 kinds of affect control goals. One is to decrease negative affect, a goal like be less anxious, or a goal to increase positive affect, have a good time. And it's the increased positive affect goals that are really much more frequent in college students than in the high school students. So we can see that the role difference between high school and college shows up in the goals that these 2 different groups of students have, right? It's, I don't think, a maturation or developmental trend, it's a role difference. And if, for example, we looked at a group of similarly aged individuals who were not in school, but perhaps had gone right from high school and to a job and were working, their goals might look rather different from the way the student goals are portrayed here. They wouldn't have academic goals. They may have some work-related goals. They're much more likely to have goals that are different from student goals when it relates to academics. And it's not clear to me, it's one of the questions I have, is whether or not work-related goals would just replace academic goals of students, or whether this entire structure would sort of reshape itself. We had asked for the participants in these studies to evaluate their goals in different ways. And this slide shows some of the results that we found. College students found their academic goals to be more difficult than high school students. That's no surprise, I would guess. If that hadn't happened, I'd have really worried about the validity of this work. But interestingly, they found their moral and religious goals more enjoyable. And I'm not sure I understand that, though I suspect that perhaps those moral and religious goals were served in a more social context with peers, whereas in high school, they may have been served, those goals may have played out more with family. And it may be more fun with peers than it is with family. High school students had more enjoyable health goals, and health goals in these populations aren't about, getting one's medication. They're largely about being active and maintaining health and fitness. And if it's not related to fitness, next most common is our goals related to appearance. And high school students found this more enjoyable than college students. And high school students reported more stress when they anticipated goal failure, regardless of goal content. And that corresponds, at least to my memory of high school, as being one that was filled with angst and anxiety. And things did get better as I aged a little bit. Well, high school and college students have discernibly different goals. There's plenty of variability within each group. And so you can't use the role differences to explain why some high school students have one goal and other high school students have a different goal. We need some other kind of tool. So I wondered what other characteristics might impact goal choice. Well, as a personality psychologist, there was a kind of an obvious candidate to test out, and that was the 5-factor model of personality traits. Are there trait differences in the kinds of goals that people formulate? Do people high in extroversion have goals that look different than the goals of people who are more introverted? So in an early study, we gave judges a long list of all the goals that our research participants had provided and asked them to just rate goal by goal. Is this goal more typical of someone high in extroversion or someone low? We did that for each of the big 5. And we had the trait measures on these individuals. So we could get the judge's rating of the goals and correlate them after we averaged up to the trait reports of our respondents. And you can see the correlations between those ratings and the self-report. The values on the main diagonal of this matrix show that the judges were largely able to discern something about the trait standing of individuals from the goal content. And that got us very excited. Judges could identify trait levels from participants' goals. But when we looked at the broad features of goal content, those 8 categories, that was no relationship at all to personality traits. People high in extroversion didn't have any more social goals than people low, nor did people high in agreeableness have more social goals than people low. And so that made us wonder what's going on. So we take a closer look. What were the social goals that our judges said were related to extroversion, and what were the social goals that were related to introversion? So we looked at that sample where we had newly arrived freshmen, people who had just come to campus. People high in extroversion had social goals like make lots of new friends. And people low in extroversion said, make a few close friends. So clearly, to capture that difference, we needed a much more refined taxonomy. And so that's what we set out to try to develop. This is that same list of 9 categories, but shows us beginning to break apart the academic occupational into a little more specific domain. And we did that for each category. So Here's how we broke up the social domain even further. But even this wasn't far enough. We dug even deeper. And so even in the romantic relations domain, we had 4 different goal categories, including that rarely seen, but nevertheless important goal of end a romantic relationship, which occasionally showed up in our students' goals. In the end, we wound up with 95 different categories to try and code the goals. And over a period of a number of years, we coded the data from nearly 1,500 UCR undergraduates into this detailed 90+ item taxonomy. And those individuals had also completed a measure of the 5-factor model. And our question then became, are those traits now related to these more finely tuned goal categories? And the answer to that was yes. Here's just a depiction of the top 10 goals in that sample of 1,400+ students. So the most popular goal was to maintain or improve relations with family or specific family members. And second was perform well at school or job. And now to turn to how these were related to traits. And for example, here are the goals positively and negatively associated with extroversion. And some of them don't have an awful lot to do with the superficial characteristics of extroversion, like why lose weight? Why are extroverts more likely to report wanting to lose weight than introverts? Probably not because they're heavier, but probably because maybe they care more about appearing to not be as heavy as they are. They would like to look lighter, perhaps for reasons for appearance. I doubt that on average, there's much of a difference in weight. And we have a list like this. I'm going to, in the interest of time, not going to discuss each of the traits, but I will run through some other slides here. I found that the really interesting on the goals negatively associated with agreeableness. So we're talking about people who are hostile, disagreeable, the kind of people who, when you're around them, you're kind of careful and you're walking, feel like you're walking on eggshells. And what's associated with that, those folks aren't interested in attaining a virtue. Right, that the people who interested in attaining a virtue, who when they give a goal say they want to be more honest or less selfish, those are people high in agreeableness, not low on agreeableness. We had found goals related to conscientiousness, emotional stability, openness. So lots and lots of results, and trying to synthesize this was a real challenge. How to put this together into a easier to understand package. And what we found is that all of these associations with the goals to traits could be fit into one of 2 categories. First category is compensatory, a goal to somehow undo the consequences of trait standing. The easiest example, someone high on neuroticism who formulates the goal, be less anxious. Right? That's what I mean by a goal that is compensatory for a trait standing. And the other relationship was complementarity, goals that enhance or support trait attributes. Here, the best example, the most obvious one, say for openness, was a goal to travel and see the world. Right? That part of what it is to be open to experiences, to want more experiences. So here's some examples of compensatory goals. People who are low on extroversion are likely to formulate a goal like be less shy. People who are high in agreeableness might want to formulate a goal like minimize influence of others. People low on conscientiousness report a goal of use time more effectively. Low on emotional stability, not worry so much. People high on openness want to clean up or get organized. And if we look at the complementary goals, people high in extroversion say they want to participate in a larger social community. People high in agreeableness want to maintain or improve relations with their family. People high on conscientiousness want to achieve a meaningful career goal. There were no complementary goals for emotional stability. And lastly, with openness, the travel goal that I mentioned. So some limitations of this work. Clearly, the results are specific to students. I don't know what would happen with other groups. We did one pilot study in a assisted living facility for older adults and asked what their goals are. And the most common response was, I don't have any goals. And when we prompted, well, do you have grandchildren that you see? And yeah, would you like them to visit? Yeah. Yeah, you have a goal. You want your goal is to get the grandchildren to visit. And that once we got them thinking, that they indeed did have goals, but their goals were not nearly as long-term as some of the goals that college students report, and for obvious reasons. The time frame that they're looking at is very different. And I think goals are something that are very salient to young adults who are facing a number of choice points in their life. And so worrying and thinking about goals is much more consequential for someone like yourselves than it is for someone like me. Another limitation is a reliance on self-report methodology, but I don't know how else to find out what your goals are if I'm not going to ask you. Some general conclusions: goal content reflects role differences between people. Personality traits are reflected in goals, and these relations are typically either compensatory or complementary. And my next question: when will trait goal relations be compensatory and when will they be complementary? And I don't know the answer to that. All I have is sort of looking back. I can see what was in the data, but I don't know, I wouldn't know how to predict that. So thank you for your invitation and for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ozer, for sharing your awesome research. For those of you who are interested in personality psychology or you're interested in goals and goal setting, please talk to him. He has some really cool thoughts. So if I can get a show of hands, who here is interested in research or is currently conducting research? Okay, a lot of hands. So boy, do we have the activity for you. Dr. Ozer and I have a very fun activity where you guys are going to actually build your own study. So let me go ahead and pull up the slides so we can talk about what we're doing. So first thing you guys are going to do is you're going to make a team of 3 to 4 people. Grab your buddies. And then you're going to come up here to me and pick out a research question. And now then you will have 15 minutes to build a mock study around your question. And then if you feel comfortable doing so, present some of your ideas and methodology to Dr. Ozer, who will give you some feedback. Please do not feel any pressure. This is more of an exercise to get your brains thinking, especially for those of you who haven't really gotten involved in research and you want to think a little more about how would you actually set some of these ideas up. So the components of what we're looking for is a hypothesis. What is your hypothesis? What do you predict is going to happen based on the research question you're getting? Methodology. How will you actually carry out this experiment? What will the participants do? What will the researchers do? What steps are you taking to actually gather this data? And then an optional section is the analysis. How will you analyze the data? This is for our analysis nerds out there. How will you actually use this data to support your hypothesis? So go ahead, grab your teams of 3 to 4, and then come up here. You will have 15 minutes to get started. Good luck.